Get Pucked. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Get Pucked podcast. Dave, Matt, and Vito here with you. How you guys doing? Holiday season episode.
Fantastic.
Off a back-to-back.
Every time. Yes, off a back-to-back.
Okay, every time. What do you want us to say? We're terrible, Matt. We're terrible.
I don't know. If you are, I just want honesty. That's all. And I want honest answers to some honest questions that I have for you, gentlemen. Let's set the scene. Let's get right into it so we know where we're at. The Habs have finally gotten a 3-game win streak under their belt. First time this season. So that's obviously exciting. Now, granted, you can argue that the teams that they played against there, perhaps, but let's not take away the credit. They did what they did, and they did it in some pretty exciting fashion. And we'll get to some of that gameplay in a second when we talk about it. But something that happened, I think, right before that first game in Detroit, a trade occurred. I don't know if we'll say it came out of the blue. I think people that were paying attention must have seen that there was some showcasing happening here and there. But what have you, it finally happened. Justin Barron, if you haven't heard, which I'm sure you have by now, has been traded to Nashville for Alexandre Carrier. And so the discrepancy of age is what a lot of people are taking some notice on. So Justin Barron, I think, is 23 years old. Carrier comes in, he's 28. This is a veteran. This is a totally different type of defenseman. He is much smaller. He is more of a shutdown guy. He does have some offensive flair from time to time, but that is not his game. And so just right off the surface, I think looking at the 2-game sample size, because he's already played 2 games with the Canadiens, both those Detroit games, the back-to-back games. He has not had a practice with the team yet. Bear in mind, no practice. And this looks already like another Kent Hughes win. I think this is a very, very good trade, in my opinion. I like to hear what you guys have to say. What do you go and take away from this move?
Okay, so we've heard the rumors for a while that they've been trying to look for somebody on the right side, and we've all pretty much said in previous episodes, and you've seen it on Twitter, Blue Sky, all that they would need a veteran, and on the right-hand side, and they need that depth. Now, some will argue that Barron is a right-handed defenseman, and he could have done certain things and whatnot, but Barron has had more than enough time to prove what he can do at the NHL level. And at moments you saw certain flashes, more so in Laval than with the Montreal Canadiens, but he didn't do it on a consistent basis. So the writing was on the wall with him, because you saw him coming in and out of the lineup. And at the same time, when you're looking at Barron and his style of play, there are other defensemen already in the pipeline that are on the right side that we're going to eventually pass him to begin with. With Carrier, you look at his advanced metrics and his advanced stats, everything suggests that he is a top 4 defenseman. He's in the top 4 pairing that he should be there. And then the fact that he's 28 brings some leadership and some vets that the Montreal Canadiens, the very young Montreal Canadiens, have needed. I also see it as a move that in all likelihood is going to be the Savard replacement. I still think Savard's going to get moved by the trade deadline. And you can see that Carrier is going to be a guy that he's already fitting in. He's already got an assist. It's 2 games. Since he got into the lineup, they're 2-0. Not entirely because of him, not granted, but okay. You can see that it's stabilized a bit of the back end, and it's easier to shuffle the lines on the back end with him in the fold than without him in the fold. Before, it's like, okay, are you putting Barron? And you'd put Barron by default because he's a right-handed shot, and you kind of want to do the left, right across the board, with the exception of Matheson and goalie and that. There's still an extra left-handed defenseman there, especially
you don't have to hold your breath. Like when Barron was on the ice, you kind of had to hold your breath a little bit. But so far the 2 games, it looks good.
The way Carrier plays, he plays a very solid, stable, grounded game. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he plays a big game, and that's what's good about him. Versus Barron is taller, has a bit of a bigger frame than Carrier, but played a very small game.
That's a very good point. A lot of people talking about the size, and that was a big thing that some of the media personalities out there made mention, that Justin Barron was a big frame but played a small game. Carrier is the opposite. Smaller guy, he's 5'11", but hockey-wise smaller. Let's not get anybody upset there. But yeah,
was a smaller and that played a big game. I'm not saying they're the same guy, but Francis Bouillon was a perfect guy like that. He was a guy that was small in stature but played a big boys game. And I'm hoping that we get a little bit of that with Carrier.
Well said. Dave?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a good trade. I mean, it's not groundbreaking or anything. It was, I think, Justin Barron experiment. I think a lot of people fell in love with his potential. Again, that word there, and a prospect, and he was acquired in the Lehkonen trade. So a lot of people had emotional attachments to him and what he could have been, because you look at his size and you look at where he was drafted, and you kind of think like, oh, this guy could be what he could be, but it wasn't working, right? They gave him the benefit of the doubt. I think that they even, a lot of people are saying about the whole veteran and youth, and he's taking up, Carrier is going to be taking up a spot. They tried the youth route, right? They gave my youth a chance. It didn't work out, and this is the next best thing. And I think that this is a good trade. I mean, it's a solid trade. I don't think it's a crazy improvement. I don't think it's a steal. I don't think it's any of those things. I just think that it's a move that for now will benefit the Montreal Canadiens. I think Carrier fits into this defensive core, and I think that yes, he will absolutely replace David Savard, who, if hopefully somebody comes knocking for David Savard and they can move him out for a piece. But I think it's we're not going to break our heads here over analyzing this trade, I don't think. But I think for what it is, it's a good trade.
I also think that
Definitely.
Okay, with David Savard, ever since he got with the Montreal Canadiens, he's kind of been miscast. He's had to play on the second pairing when ideally on a championship team similar to with Tampa Bay back then, he was on a third pairing guy. That was his sweet spot, and then at times we saw him at the top pairing because he was the only right-handed shot, and he was always kind of bouncing around. And now you're kind of seeing at the age of 34 that he's been playing these top 4 minutes for quite some time. It seems like it was catching up to him a little bit. Now they brought him down to the third pairing with Arbor Xhekaj. Arbor Xhekaj is, stabilized his game, and he's been fantastic of late. And then you're looking at David Savard. He's starting to be, play a defensive defenseman. When they're quiet, that's what you want from them. When you have somebody like Carrier who's got the energy that he has, who's a little bit younger, who plays a defensive defenseman game and has all his advanced metrics suggest that he should be at least a number 4. You look at him and say, okay, if an injury happens during the game and you have to bump him up to the top pairing, it can be done in that moment as an in-game adjustment. And if all of a sudden you end up getting Mailloux comes in, Reinbacher comes in, and Carrier's on your third pairing, all of a sudden your top 6 on the right side is looking very stable. I'm not saying right away Reinbacher and Mailloux are going to need some time to get their feet wet at the NHL level. But I'm just saying, if you go down a couple of years from now, because at the end of the day, it's a 3-year contract, so you have to look at it that way too with Carrier. You're just looking at it as it's one of those moves that, while it's not earth-shattering, it's a very good quiet move. It's one of those that I think is going to help the Montreal Canadiens in many ways, in more ways than people think.
It's a nice thing when you look at, when you take Martin St. Louis' comments about it, with him saying it gives him more options, because with Barron, you didn't have options. You put him out there, he was to try to do the thing that he would do, and more often than not, he wouldn't do it. Or it didn't materialize on the ice. So with Carrier there, you have more options, and that just allows you to tinker a bit more and play a better game of chess against your opponents. When he does matchups, when he does that, that's great.
Even for the PK.
Yeah, and the PK, that seems to be what this kid's all about, which is another big thing. It's very, very helpful to have somebody like that. Justin Barron did not play the PK. So you added more elements to it, and that is a really big thing. I think you nailed it too. You're looking at the right term. It's a 3-year contract. He's in the first year of 3 years. He's probably a touch more than you would have liked to see. I think he's 3.75. All right. So it's a bit more than maybe if we had the ability to change that contract, we'd probably try to keep him at 3, but it's not an, oh my God, overpay. The most important thing about him coming in is the stability. You can now slow play your guys in Laval. Mailloux doesn't have to get rushed up for an organizational need. He can now marinate down in Laval and keep dominating. Reinbacher's going to need time when he comes back. You've now added yourself a age-appropriate stopgap. And of course, David Savard will very likely be somebody who they're going to try to shop now, knowing that they have this guy here as the veteran defenseman to replace him, to have that kind of leadership. So this is across the board a win to me.
Yeah, and the other thing I just want to add with Barron is that it's not like, okay, Barron was, he was coming in and out of the lineup, but his style of play would suggest that he should be on the power play and get some power play minutes, right? Whether it's deserving or undeserving, is just it's a style of play.
He's an offensive defenseman. Yeah.
When you have Lane Hudson, Darren Matheson, that are basically, with the way the Canadians run their power plays, that it's 4 forwards and a defenseman, where does Barron fit? He's just not the right guy. But where there was a need was on the PK, where you could slot somebody there, even relieve some minutes off of David Savard and all of that stuff. David Savard last year was one of the NHL leaders in block shots. That's going to take a toll on somebody for a little bit. You know what I mean?
The minutes that this kid's going to add, last little bit on this, I think a lot of people have made mention this. You already noticed Matheson's numbers in the last Detroit game were way down because you can now rely comfortably on this other guy to come in and help. Savard will benefit from the same thing. Everybody's numbers are going to drop a bit because you have this guy now there,
and he's mobile.
Capable.
He's mobile. He's not maybe he's a notch below Barron in terms of mobility, but I'd rather have a more balanced out guy like him that gives me the mobility, but is defensive. He's a defensive defenseman that gives me a different element that Barron could not give, because that's not Barron's style. It's not a slight to Barron. It's just we're not talking about the same caliber and same type of player right now, and in the stages of their career.
Exactly.
Excuse me.
No, on that topic, I mean, I think we're all in agreement. I mean, earth-shattering, no, but this made the team better, and I think this was a shrewd move from Kent Hughes and management that somehow, some way, they made this happen. They were able to cut ties with a player they acquired that they had high hopes for that hasn't worked out. They realized they made a mistake and they moved on from it. Takes a lot for anybody, for that matter, to admit when they made a mistake. So good on them, and I think it's really nice as a little cherry on top that the kid is from Quebec too, so that's always a nice thing to have when you bring in a player. Just a nice thing. Another nice thing, I want to talk about this guy. I feel like we bring him up a little bit, maybe more often than perhaps other podcasts that talk about the Canadiens do, but I feel he's merited it. Jake Evans. What is going on with Jake Evans? This guy is playing phenomenal hockey. He is on the PK. He is scoring goals. He's looking good out there. He gets some of the toughest matchups. This guy is everywhere. He's playing great hockey, and we've talked about this in the past. Do we have guys in the lower ranks that are coming up that would logically be the ones to replace him? And is he worth moving now? Right? Other teams maybe making a push for the playoffs might want a guy like Jake Evans. Who wouldn't? And now that I see what he's bringing night in and night out, and it's funny because it's in a contract year, and we always put a little asterisk on that because guys in contract years often have their best seasons. That being said, I ask, what is better for this team for the future? I don't need the trade package, but would you prefer that they come to terms, because apparently they haven't talked negotiations yet? Would you be happy if you read that all of a sudden they signed him to maybe 4 years, 5 years at some number that you would like? Or are you more in the camp saying, go as high as his stock can go by trade deadline and find a buyer and get something big for a return?
You have to stop trading these guys. And I'm sick of constantly talking about, let's just move everybody on. We have youth coming up. Look how long it took Jake Evans to get where he is. Jake Evans, to play the role that he's playing, it took him 4 years, 4 solid NHL seasons, and even a bit more. He played 5, and this is his 5th or 6th NHL season. It takes time to develop these guys. You're not just going to drop Owen Beck and he's going to be magically what Jake Evans is now. It's going to take him time to develop to where he is now. If you just keep moving these guys for what? Another pick? Like, we're done with that. I think we're absolutely done with that. It is concerning to me that there has been absolutely no negotiations. It lends me to think that something's going on there. Maybe they are thinking about moving on from him. But to me, if I'm the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, Jake Evans is perfect. He knows the system. He's worked well in it. He's worked his way up. He's grown with the team, in my opinion, estimation. The fans like him. You know what you're getting from him. Just why? Why do you have to trade all these guys? Why do you enough with the asset management, man? Like, you have players are assets too. It's not just about getting prospects and picks all the time. You got to play. And Jake Evans is a guy who can play on this team, and he can play, and he fits in their frame going forward. So to me, absolutely not. I would absolutely not trade Jake Evans. Absolutely not. Unless, obviously, the ask is too high in terms of money of what he wants. Like, obviously, that's the one caveat. Like, you don't want him to overpay him. But I honestly think that they could get him at a reasonable rate. It doesn't look like they've even inquired, but I'm sure that they can. Yeah. And to me, it's just, you got to stop. Like, look what happens. And I get the Monahan deal, okay? And I get him probably for what he signed. Like, it probably wouldn't have been a fit. But like, look what happens when you take guys like that out of the lineup. Like, you can notice a significant and noticeable decrease in how the Canadiens play hockey. And Jake Evans is a guy who's a solid guy. Just keep these guys, man. He's not going to get you a top prospect and a first round pick. Like, that's not going to happen. You're going to trade him for someone who you hope is going to be an equivalent down the line in 4 years' time. Like, why? What's the point? Just keep Jake Evans. That's my
It's going to depend. It's going
I
to
don't know
depend
why
on.
he would take the complete opposite stance. So
It's going to depend on what he wants. It'll depend on a couple of episodes ago we were saying, okay, because we started seeing Jake Evans kind of like spiking up a little bit, and we're like, okay, what would you re-sign him, or and if so, what would it be like? And at the time, I had said that a sweet spot would be 2.7, but I could see him being around Armia's contract at 3.4, and I've even put that out there on X and on Blue Sky and all that, and saying that 3.4 is where I could see, and they basically just hand him Armia's contract and say, this is yours. But with the way he's playing, if the season ended today, you're looking at a guy that's going to be closer to 4 million, maybe a bit more. He took a hometown discount at the time of $1 million or so, just to stay with the Montreal Canadiens and prove himself. And now it's like, no, he's 28 years old. It's time. He's probably going to want his payday. Now, he probably likes Montreal, loves Montreal. They gave him his shot and whatever. Maybe there's a home discount to be had there a little bit. But if the season ended today, he's probably going to look and say, look what I've done. I'm fourth on the team in scoring. I've produced. And when you look back at Jake Evans, before you saw those flashes. He was doing well right up until he got hit by Mark Scheifele and he got that concussion, and he was dealing with some concussion issues. So if you looked at Jake Evans then, and you're like, okay, that's why he was signed and he was extended. We know what we're getting with this guy, and he could be the future third line center. And maybe at that time, if you guys remember, we were talking about if Danault doesn't resign or stay with the Montreal Canadiens, he could replace Danault. So if they trade him now, I feel like Montreal, I can see the pros and cons of trading him and keeping him. Like, if you trade him now, we're gonna kind of relive the same things we kind of lived when we moved on from Danault, to a lesser extent, because Danault was still offensively is more productive than Jake Evans, but it's in the same realm, in my opinion. You're talking about guys who are two-way responsible guys who are assets to the team and contribute in a different aspect and a different element that right now the Montreal Canadiens don't have an immediate replacement for him. It's easy to put Owen Beck there and say he's going to be the guy that replaces Jake Evans. But the way I see it is that if Jake Evans continues going this way and you bring in Owen Beck next year, start him off on the fourth line, and if all of a sudden you're seeing Owen Beck is ahead of schedule and is closer to how Jake Evans, if Jake Evans is still playing the same way, it's going to be just as easy to move him. You might have to retain depending on money.
Yeah,
If they go, but if they go in, if Jake Evans wants a $5 million deal and the guy's never posted 50 points, and what my rule is, usually it's 10 points for every a million for every 10 points, with a few exceptions, of course. If he wants $5 million, then no, you have to move on. But if it's a 3.5, 4.2, it hurts. But with the cap going up to 92 million, you may have to consider it.
First off, Jake Evans, and again, I found it funny that Dave took this stance because I thought he'd be as emphatic, but the other way, like, yeah, absolutely, stock is as high as it can be, move him. So it made me laugh. I 100% agree with Dave. You can't just keep flipping guys who are on contract years, who are playing well, and move on. This is the prime time to see a guy who is home-brewed, drafted, progressed, moved up. You can see where his game is at now, where you already like it, and it seems like he's only getting better. He's touch older than the perfect age, but not that old. You sign this guy, you lock him up, you got yourself your 3C, and there's no doubt about it. You don't have to question it. He is not going to ask for $5 million. I don't think that's even going to be close. I like the Armia contract. I like that equivalent. If it were 3-4, I'd be very happy with it. If it's closer to 4, let's see how he finishes the season.
If it's under 4, okay, it's digestible. If it's over 4, it's gonna be like, okay, now he puts something like, he gets the money, right? He's gonna be happy as an individual getting the money, but now he's gonna have to play it to that. I don't night in and night out.
Something he'd have to continue this upwards trajectory in his game like he has been for the last couple of weeks, where he's been a very noticeable player. Bless you, Dave.
Sorry about that.
Like, he's been super noticeable, and in both sides of the ice. That's the interesting thing. We already knew he was casted as a guy who's going to be there to shut down the other team. He plays the most PK minutes. I think he's one of the most utilized guys in the PK in the league. So he has his spot. He knows it, but he's also putting up offense, which is interesting because that wasn't really his thing before, but he's now adding that secondary scoring that this team has been desperate for forever. And that's worth something to me too. So if it's in the 3.5, between 3.5 and 4, and you can get him at 4 years, I mean, yeah, I don't care if Owen Beck is
honestly,
coming.
I'd be surprised 4 years because that would take him to 32, really, like 32, 33 years old. He might be wanting that 6-year contract, and I think that's going to be the sticking point. It's not going to be so much the dollars. I think it's going to be the term so they could have some stability. Because let's call a spade here. Yes, we're liking Jake Evans, but he's got a history with some concussions, and it takes one more
for sure.
If he wants the distance, then the numbers come down, and it just makes it that much easier too. I mean, 28 now, 6 years.
This has the vibe. I know I brought up Danault as a comparable just because, but it's also when you're looking at what the trade package the return would be, it'd be closer to a Lehkonen in my opinion. So you're getting like David said, a guy that you hope can be an equivalent or something that could be fitting a need, and a pick of some kind. In the Lehkonen case, it ended up being Michael Hage, which TBD on that one, right? But right now, as it stands, this is what I'll say. If Kirby Dach as a 2C was playing the way that we hoped and expected him to be, then I think while they might not be the same player, not whatever, I'd be more inclined to say, okay, let's move on from Jake Evans. But right now, there's a center problem in Montreal because of that 2C slot, and I still think that Kirby Dach needs to come down. And in the meantime, as a stopgap, you need to bring Jake Evans up.
We also just need to stop. I've seen this a lot of places online. He didn't get the pick that was acquired in the Lehkonen deal was a second-round pick that they packaged with another to get Hage.
Yes, to get to Michael Hage. But if they didn't have that pick, they likely wouldn't have been able to move up that way.
They could have.
It helped. It was an asset that helped get them where they needed to get.
Okay, fair, but it's not fair to say that he was traded for Barron and Michael Hage. Like I feel like that's
no, it's the end result. But when you're looking at the trade tree,
that's why I hate trade trees. Trade trees are
right.
ridiculous.
That's the end result.
They're interesting, but they're not.
I find them fun, but just to say,
they're fun. Don't get me wrong.
It was still an asset that allowed them to get the overall package that they got right now.
Just another thing about your comparison, though. I mean, I understand what you're trying to say when you compare Danault, but Danault was the first line center on the team when he was not re-signed. He was playing the top line.
That was a miscast. First off, that's a miscast.
But that's what he was doing.
But even at that, right? So he goes to LA and he becomes the 3C.
He's not right away. He was 2C.
No, he started as a 2C, but even 2 or 3C, you're still looking at a guy who was posting 50+ points.
Yeah, no. He's a different kind of cat. Danault was up there. He was a great two-way guy, but a bigger offensive flair.
But my point is that Evans is a notch below that. So you don't put him at the Danault, but it's the same principle that you know what you're getting. But Danault back then, you knew what you were getting. Yeah. Now there was other layers there with the behind the scenes negotiations and whatnot. That was with Bergevin and whatever happened there.
We don't talk about.
I'm talking specifically the player, their contribution to the team, and their numbers. Evans is not Danault, but we were okay back then before Evans got laid out by Scheifele to say that if Danault does walk,
Evans might be able to move.
Evans might be able to at least do the defensive game or play the defensive game to some degree to what Danault was contributing back then.
I'm just telling you.
I'm just saying. My point is that injury slowed down what we probably would have seen of Jake Evans.
Now,
maybe a year ago, right? We probably would have seen it a year ago. The other thing too, he was a trooper all those years while they were trying to figure out what their center was going to look like, and they were plugging him on the fourth line with a bunch of plumbers.
Well, trooper. I mean, he was happy to be up in the NHL. I mean, I'm not gonna. I mean, good for him, but that doesn't really like rock me in any which way to make it seem like, oh yeah, he's
no, because there's a lot of players. Yes, but there's a lot of players that like him and where he felt his game was at and what he could have brought forward and whatnot would have been like, no, I want to play a consistent 3C. I'm a 3C guy.
I'm sure he wanted to play a consistent 3C too, but he did what he had to do because that's where he was casted. I like that aspect of him, but that's a personality thing, which couples into what I'm about to say. I can't think of a realistic trade package that would be offered for him that I would say I prefer the trade package over what he brings to the team. I don't think you're going to get
Great.
enough for him to make that make sense. I like his value more, his character more, his personality more, and his style of play more than what you're going to get back for a trade package. Unless if somebody is completely off their rocker and gives you something outrageous, which is always the little caveat, but I don't see it happening. I don't think they flip him for the Lehkonen deal. I wouldn't take the Lehkonen deal. I'd keep Jake
unless you have to think out of the box a little bit, and unless it's a package deal where you're looking at an Evans in combination with something else to go get something else. You know what I mean?
Well, okay, anything could happen. And if it is some outrageous thing to go net you a superstar, sure. But I'm just saying in general, if you're looking to unload just the guy, it's just the guy.
The individual guy,
deadline,
you're right.
I can't see something coming back that makes sense. So we're all in agreement. And I'm curious in the comments below, let us know your take on the whole Jake Evans thing as well. What would you do with him? Where do you see him? Do you like him for a long-term piece for the Habs, or with the stock being as high as it is, and if he continues this progression, would you like to try to flip him at the deadline for whatever? Let us know your trade package in the comments below. Plus, I'll take the moment to say like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you very much. Moving on. I'm going to skip this because I want to get to this other one because I think it's a little bit more picante. What is the deal and what needs to happen with Cayden Primeau? Because when you play your main goalie back-to-back nights, Monty played a Friday night, took an airplane, and then played the Saturday night game back-to-back. When questioned about it, Martin St. Louis was less than amused. So feel free to go look up those clips. But at this point, clearly, the team is not comfortable with Cayden Primeau's game. Now, last year, we had the goalie carousel because of a fear that if you put him on waivers, he was going to get claimed. I don't know what to do here, but I know that Montembeault cannot play every single game all the time. And with the way the team is playing, they clearly want to play to win, and they don't trust Cayden Primeau in net to win. What do you do?
Well, sadly, even a tired Montembeault is going to play better than Cayden Primeau right now. Cayden Primeau has the worst goaltending statistics in the entire NHL. That includes backups. Okay? So he's not doing well. He's had several opportunities to prove that he could be an NHL caliber goalie on a game per game basis, not a shift per shift, not a minute per minute, game per game basis. And unfortunately, even games where he's had to come in and to relieve Montembeault, he lets in these banana goals and they go in, and it's ridiculous. He seems like right now he's going to have to be a guy that's going to go on the Zach Fucale path, right? Where he's going to go to the AHL, go play overseas, and now do a full circle, because now apparently a lot of teams are interested in bringing Fucale back because he's killing it overseas. All right, but Cayden Primeau, right now, he's a minor leaguer. So if they want to put him on waivers today, I'm 99.9% sure nobody's claiming him unless there's a team out there that is so decimated with injuries in the back end that they'd have no choice to just have a body. Because now put
him on waivers.
As mean as this sounds, he's no different than the Zamboni driver. Just put a body there. That's it.
We're all in agreement. He is not a good goalie. What do you do with him? What do you do?
When Jakub Dobeš comes back? When Jakub Dobeš comes back because he's hurt, you call him up and send Primeau down.
So Dobeš is your answer.
Dobeš is my answer for now. Because right now the market with the goalies, there's teams that are looking for goalies, but it's such a weird market. I've been saying it for the last 2 years. The depth in the NHL for goaltenders is the worst I have ever seen it. So it's like, even who are they going to go get? I understand that people might come out and say, well, they had Jake Allen. Yes, but they had to move on from Jake Allen, given his age, given where he was at, and because they thought, hey, we had Primeau, and we
no. Don't talk Jake Allen. If you're going to give us an answer about this,
covering that basis. I covered that basis before anybody throws it at us.
Fair, because that ship sailed. I'm asking today, now, with the way that Cayden Primeau has been playing, which wasn't good, and the very notion that the team is obviously starting to at least make a forward progress in the win columns, and they're not that far removed where if they go on a tiny bit of a run, that in the mix comment starts to come back and
Well,
haunt us.
they are in the mix when you look at the standings. They're 7 points behind a wild
Fine.
card.
No,
but
okay.
it's like,
Listen.
whatever.
They're in the mix, but they're not quite in the mix. String
Correct.
together another couple wins and have some key losses for the other teams there. They're in the mix. And you can't maintain being in the mix with one goalie. So your answer is get Dobeš up there by any means necessary. And that's the play.
He can't do worse than Primeau right
Fair
now.
enough.
Primeau's confidence is at an all-time low. His save percentage is terrible. His goals against average is terrible. I think he's got like one win. He's not the right guy. He's just not.
Fair.
And I get it. Goalies take a while to develop, and maybe he could still become an everyday backup in the NHL. But go to Laval, get your confidence up. Because the other thing too, and I think we've mentioned it in the past, many episodes ago, he's fragile when it comes to like his mind. One goal goes in, and you can see the whole game has turned on him.
No, I don't disagree. I really don't. Dave, what's the solution?
I mean, yeah, the solution is to get Primeau's done, I think, in the NHL, at least with the Montreal Canadiens. I think it's telling that you go back to back with Sam Montembeault. I think, in the NHL these days, there's just such a significant dip in the stats when it comes to playing back to back games for goaltenders. It's just not the smart thing to do at any level. So there's obviously something there. It's either sending a message to Cayden Primeau by Marty St. Louis and the Canadiens, or it's just, hey, we're moving on. It's sending a message to the management and say, do something. Let's get him out of here. There's a message being sent there. And whatever it is, it's not good news for Cayden Primeau. Cayden Primeau, for long, we've talked about this. We have no faith in him, really, in terms of being a starting NHL goaltender or even a capable backup. At least that's been my opinion for a very, very long time. I think that the whole 3-goalie system last year was absolutely foolish. And I think you just put him down, bring up Dobeš for now until you try to find another solution. Because ideally, you'd like to see a little bit more in the AHL and then playing it. Because Montembeault is going to get the bulk of the starts no matter what, I think, going forward. So at this point, you kind of want Dobeš to have some touches. So it's not the perfect solution. But for now, I think that's the solution for now. And then you just try to maybe figure something else out. You go look at what the goalie market is and consider something short-term as a short-term fix until you get other guys there. Even, you have Connor Hughes, you have,
There's Fowler.
Well, Fowler, you can't rush, right? I wouldn't.
It's years from now.
So I would just wait and you don't want to do anything drastic. If you don't have confidence to play Cayden Primeau against the Detroit Red Wings on a back-to-back,
well, here, Dave,
that's the biggest telling factor out of all of it. That you didn't have the okay to just be like, listen, get the same team you played the night before who you beat. Now you're playing at home, and they're more tired,
and they're terrible,
and they're not good. So it's wild to me.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you some numbers, right? Because I have to pull them up here. Cayden Primeau has played 11 games. So he's got 2 wins, 3 losses, 7 games. 2 wins, 3 losses, 1 OT loss. He's got 41 goals against. He's got an .836 save percentage and a 4.70 goals against average. That's not even, those aren't backup numbers. That's ECHL numbers.
The team also, I don't know why. I mean, I'll defend him a little bit here. For some reason, when you watch, maybe it's a confidence thing, or I don't know. The team does play far worse when he's in net. The defensive gaps. You got the lens flare going on. Easy there, JJ Abrams. Oh my goodness! I gotta fix this guy. That's crazy. Bottom line, I agree with you both. My thing about it is I don't necessarily like the idea of having another unproven young backup.
I agree.
So I would like
the market.
Yeah, some way, somehow. Picks something, find a team out there and get a backup from them. Even if you got to look at Toronto, who has something like 5 goalies or some nonsense that they have, you got to find a guy who can come in. So you don't bring up a guy who's doing well and is still learning on the job. I like where Dobeš was going, where his game was at. You don't want to pull that away for him to go sit on the bench.
Sorry to cut you off, but even the Montreal Canadiens knew that they had a bit of a goaltending issue. On the offseason, there was all the rumors that they would attempted to go and acquire Askarov. So they were clearly trying to address it in the offseason, and they weren't able to do it. I guess once they got into the season, they're like, okay, we got to see where we go with Primeau,
it was what it was.
Because he was Admittedly, Primo was dealt a bit of a bad hand last year with the carousel and the fact that, it kind of hurt his development a little bit and whatever the case may be, because they don't want to waive him. So he stayed upstairs eating hot dogs the whole time, but again, with that, he then had the offseason to train and come into it, and he hasn't proven. So clearly the Montreal Canadiens know they've still got a goaltending issue, and I do think that they're going to address it. It's a question of who's out there that they could bring in that can help them out. And that's
I don't
the
care.
problem. There's not
I
much.
don't care who's out there. Find somebody. Make a deal. Give up a little bit to go bring it in so that you're actually benefiting the team by not affecting the natural progression of your younger goalies.
The only team that right now has a goaltending issue that they're trying to unload, the only problem is I think they're all a little bit expensive, is actually Detroit. Damn. Sorry, guys, with the sun over here.
Look, you can't overpay for a goalie either. You just want a little bit of stability for the time being. I don't think it's an incredible need. I think that it's fine how it is now. Like worst case scenario, Cayden Primeau sticks around and Montembeault gets the bulk of the game and Primeau plays a couple of back-to-backs until you can't be rushed into a deal. I don't think it's like a dire need where you have to panic.
Dire, no, but I mean, you're gonna grind Monty to the ground. I mean, I'm sure he'll play every game you ask him to, but it isn't good for him or the team. You should have a guy who you can reliably give some backup games to.
Yeah, I agree. Look, we've seen a lot of trades, right? We saw Colorado moved out both of their goaltenders for Blackwood.
Right
and, Matt Murray made a reappearance, as you said, in Toronto somehow.
Some way.
So look, there's been goaltender movement all throughout the NHL, and I think that there is something to be had there. You just got to figure it out, and you got to make it a good price, and you got to make sure, again, like it doesn't block anybody down the line or do anything, just overcrowd your net and you come up with an awkward situation again. I think you just have to find something that works. And it's looking better than ever.
Guys,
while Vito continues, for those that are just listening audio, Vito's having some camera difficulties with some lens flare happening up. So he's busy trying to fix that out. I would really like, if I can throw this one out there as a final thought on the goalie situation, Buffalo is a dumpster fire of dumpster fires these days, and they happen to have a young goalie there. And he's played games. I know I said I don't want a young guy, but you could bring him in, and I don't know. I mean, so that would be something I would look at, because clearly they're going to want to tear that thing down. I mean, I don't care how many places the owner flies out to and tells them that the answer is in the room there. And I like Buffalo. I like their sports teams. I like their fan base, and I feel terrible for them.
Yeah, but that is bad. The solution there is actually quite simple. They've needed veterans for years.
Oh, let's get into a heated debate. And
I don't want to get into Buffalo and the Buffalo hockey situation because that's rough. We have time for one more thing. I'll let you guys decide. Do you want to talk about Patrik Laine and the power play, or do you want to talk about the stud in the bottom six known as Emil Heineman?
Ooh. I'll let Vito decide. I mean,
Vito makes the call. Go ahead. What do you think?
Patrik Laine.
Suck. All right.
Boring.
So Emil Heineman, right? So he's okay. Patrik Laine. Patrik Laine has done something that I didn't think was possible. Patrik Laine has made the Montreal Canadiens power play something exciting to watch. It was so upsetting to know that when the whistle went off, whether we got the penalty or the other team got the penalty, you were disappointed. That's how it was for a long time now with the Canadiens. Patrik Laine shows up and from day one out the gate has made this power play one of the most exciting things to watch in hockey, and I stand by that. That first unit of the power play on this team is now worth the price of admission. Forget the fact that he set a record. Forget that. Put aside the fact he has 8 power play goals in his first 9 games with the team. Put that aside. Just the way they're clicking. Just the way the puck is moving. The shots on net. All of these things combined. The fact that they can stay in the opposing area and
the
play.
Offensive zone.
the offensive zone, and they're not going to the defensive zone to go rush back. The fact that this is happening, guys, I feel like I'm in a cloud.
Do you like what he said about Lane Hudson yesterday?
Yes.
That Lane Hudson is the best quarterback
He's had on the power. Okay, so that's my question. Is this the most exciting Habs power play you have seen in over 15 years?
In my life.
In your life. There you go.
It's absolutely. I mean, look, it's a small sample size, and there's obviously room for it to go.
No, Dave, don't go there.
But I'm just saying, it's what's more exciting than this, man? You have arguably one of the most exciting defensive prospects running the thing after finally getting the chance to do it after, kind of being shelved for the first
30 games. Yeah.
It didn't really make any sense.
Lord, Dave, have you forgotten the Carbonneau era where they were first in the league on the power play?
Well, okay, you could be first in the league. Sheldon Surrey teeing things up. It doesn't get as excited. Now you have a bona fide elite superstar on goal scoring machine on your team. And I again, we spoke about this since the beginning, before there were even Laine talks. We were talking about Patrik Laine to the Habs, okay? And I said you cannot say no to superstars. And there is a superstar in this team, and it's not just a power play specialist, okay? And that's what's scary to me. To go on a little bit of a tangent, is he has 8 goals in 9 games, all on the power play, and he hasn't even rounded out his game yet. He's still getting used to getting back in the lineup. But wait till his 5-on-5 play improves. Wait till he, just wait a little bit with Patrik Laine.
Trade him.
It's so exciting and refreshing, and to me, it's exciting. I understand. To me, it approaches the Sheldon Surrey era, because Sheldon Surrey's shot was so fun to watch, and it was almost automatic. He was just going to get teed up, fucking score a goal. It was just fun to watch. But was it exciting? This is exciting, man. You have
Alex Kovalev?
Yeah, I get it. I understand. But
I take this over that.
And you have Cole Caulfield, okay, who like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks. It's not a recency bias, though. It's not. You have a guy who scored 8 power play goals in 9 games. Like, how much more exciting can you get?
Caulfield got thrown to the side.
Caulfield was the guy who was, was getting predictable with Caulfield already, and now it's like a life of its own. This power play is so fun. There's so many options, and the worst part is what's going to happen, and it still happens.
They're using the Ovechkin.
Yeah, I was going to say they're using the Ovechkin formula.
Yes. Yeah. So in terms of excitement, absolutely. This is as exciting as it gets. It's worth the price of admission. And that's what a guy like Patrik, and I think that the Canadiens fans have been so starved. The fan base have been so starved for an actual superstar, an actual elite superstar, not in their own minds, not in the consistent back end boring guy. Like, you have a legitimate bona fide goal scoring machine superstar, and this is what it could be. And it's a beautiful thing.
I just need them to get Gallagher on that line so I can have my chance at 30 goals again.
Hey, why not?
Yeah, on my prediction.
I just, to answer my own question, you watch a guy literally get the puck from the OV spot, and when it's on his stick, I think of that moment to go into a little bit of the Marvel universe for a second, when Thanos shows up and he says, "I'm inevitable." The goal is inevitable. He's shooting the puck so hard in back-to-back games, it went through a defender's stick and blew up his stick.
That stick, I'm glad you said it. That's Mort Seider's stick. Back-to-back games, he broke both his sticks.
He shot it through. The first time he did it, it scored the goal. It broke right through his stick and went in the net. The second time, it did deflect it off. But, I mean, it is insane. And that is just one section of it. But the way that they cycle and the fact that they know that the team has to cheat to cover him, you now have Nick open more. You have Slav, who's with his big giant frame near the net doing his thing. It's and Lane Hudson doing that blue line, the thing with the heads and dodging people.
His edge work,
guys,
is phenomenal.
It's fun. It's fun. It's finally fun.
It's the most movement we've seen from a Habs power play since Kovalev.
It's
off the half wall.
Every
time it was always a static type of power play. It was okay, the Shea Weber day. It was literally just find a way to get it to Weber for him to blast through everybody and hurt them, even if they hurt them. Most of the time it was Gallagher he hurt, but that's what it was.
True.
Before that, they were doing it with Subban, and sometimes Subban tried to make it exciting by doing a couple of pirouettes and spinoramas and whatever. But it was get it to him so he could rip the cannon of a shot too. So this is the first time that we see the power play moving and cycling, and everybody getting involved since the Carbonneau power play, since they were first, and they had Kovalev there and Placanis on the half wall, moving
and
cycling the half wall and all that.
And what's amazing is like these teams obviously now they know, right? Like maybe 2-3 goals in, but like now you know that you have to what to look out for, and nobody's been able to stop it. Granted, it's the Red Wings. Okay, I get it, but still.
Yeah, but Dave, you're right, because they have to watch out for Laine, and they know that if they put all the focus on Laine, you have Nick Suzuki, who's able to rip a pretty strong and solid and accurate shot, and then if they put the focus and they split the guys up, that opens up Caulfield, and it's always there's a threat on every way.
And this is what the superstar factor brings. And that's why everybody who says no or hesitates it's the pain and the tattooed pain, the pain that's been implemented in you for generations of not having an actual superstar on it to actually ever doubt having a guy like Patrik Laine join the Canadiens. This is what superstars bring to teams.
I don't think people doubted having
Patrik No. Many people doubt he's bad in the room. He's bad this. He doesn't want to play strong. Listen, I don't like to toot our own horns too much. This podcast, all right, hear me well, listeners. If you've been here with us for a while, you heard well before the rumor was really out there, we talked about Patrik Laine as being a candidate for this team to go after, to do what he is doing now. And he's doing it, and damn, does it make me sleep well at night knowing that these three bums on this podcast were like, you know what, we think they should do that. And they did it, and it worked. Just say it. I'm just saying. Just putting that one out there.
I mean, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but even there was some, when we had Greg on, for example, and he had a different view. He was still excited, don't get me wrong, but prior to the trade, he had his reservations too. And I think it's normal to have reservation, but again, I think it's the trauma that's of not having a superstar.
Well, there was a lot of reason to have those reservations and to be cautious about it because of all the history behind it. Nobody was denying Laine's talent and his skill set, and you've seen it. What he was capable to do with Winnipeg and what he was able to do in moments with Columbus. There was this thing around Laine that was the baggage. That was carrying a lot of
baggage. But it was worth the risk.
Exactly.
People didn't even want to do the risk. They're like, it's too risky. It's not worth it. And then when they made that trade, okay, bear in mind, okay, to quote a friend of mine, they basically paid us to take him.
Yeah, it was like pretty much.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yes,
it's
it was
insane.
A crazy trade.
It's finally something good just fell into the laps of the Canadiens.
It worked out for Columbus too when you look at it, because Columbus is having a very strong season. So,
I don't know if
stronger with Patrik Laine, I think.
I'm not saying it's dedicated just to that trade, but I'm just saying it would have been one thing that
I think Columbus is good in spite of that trade. They lost that trade. It was a bad trade.
They did lose that trade.
Just like Calgary
lost the Monahan trade. You know what I mean? Like they lost
another good one. Another good one too. Monahan's resurgence after they paid us a first to take him. That is the kind
makes sense at least, man. Monahan was this guy who was littered with injuries. You weren't sure. He never produced really.
Laine was riddled with injuries and leaving on NHL.
Patrik Laine was a second overall pick. He was a guy who scored 40 goals. Like it's a huge difference between Patrik Laine and Sean Monahan.
It's just listen. It's a loaded question because there's nobody here, there's nobody listening who can write down and tell me with a straight face that this isn't an exciting power play. It's just I wanted to bring it up because it is a nice thing that's finally happened, even though they're trending in a nice direction now. Bear in mind the team is still at the bottom of the standings. I think they're fifth from the bottom of the standing now.
And again,
but there's time, and they're starting to click. And at least if the product is exciting, the fans will tolerate another non-playoff year. This is an exciting product. I'd like to see this level of product against better teams. So as we move into the new year and they start to go and play some of the better teams of the league, I like to see competitive games. I like to see the same level of success on the power play. But for now, it's been really, really great to see what's been happening.
Another thing that Patrik Laine does, just to wrap it all up here, Patrik Laine, what Patrik Laine brings to this team is who's talking about Kirby Dach right now, who's talking about Juraj Slafkovsky right now, and his and
That's very fair. That's very fair.
It takes the attention, and it just lets them maybe get back on track without this monkey on their back that's just like constantly in their faces all the time.
They're even nobody's even talking about Nick Suzuki. They're just, it's all Laine and Hudson right now. Laine Hudson.
It allows people to breathe a little bit, and maybe I'm not saying it will get their game back on track, but it allows the possibility for it, as opposed to just constantly being like, "What's going on with Kirby Dach? What's going on with Kirby Dach? What's going on with Kirby Dach?" It just lets them breathe, and I think that benefits everybody on the team as well. If you're just not around negativity, it just helps everybody grow.
I'm in full agreement with that. That's an excellent point too. And let's hope that train keeps going, right? I mean, I don't knock wood, let him score on every power play that comes up. But I mean, at some point, this streak he's on will stop. And we just hope, to your point, the well-roundedness of his game, he starts to connect more in 5-on-5. But the games, the hockey that they've been playing in the past couple of games have been good hockey, regardless of their opponents. They've just looked better. They've looked like they're starting to buy into whatever the message is. It looks like they're getting their feet better. It looks like the pairings and the line combinations are starting to stabilize a bit. And this is all great stuff. So with that, I guess I'll save my Emil Heineman question for next time. But anyways, let us know, please, in the comments below about any of the things we talked about, be it Jake Evans and your take on it, and what you're feeling about this power play. And if you're one of the older listeners, where does this rank in terms of some of the great power plays you might have watched growing up when you were young? Let us know your take on on any of the things that we talked about today. We're always happy to listen. And since this is probably the last time we'll speak before the holidays and Christmas and everything, Merry Christmas, happy holidays on behalf of the Get Puck podcast. Thank you, and we appreciate you all very much for listening and taking the time. And happy New Year. And if you boys want to throw in your own little something there at the end.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Of course.
Happy holidays.
Let's go. Drink your hearts.
Thank you, everybody.
Get Pucked.